And we'll get started with the regularly scheduled Selectmen's Advisory Committee on Buildings and Infrastructure. And I wanted to mention before we get started that we don't really have a Board of Ed item on the agenda, so Dan Clark is with us, but there's really no need for Dan to stay unless he wants to. There's Penny. Okay, so we have one more, and we're still missing Neil and Paul Tully. But again, we we have a quorum with myself, Amy, Penny, Stuart Sarabini, Penny Ration, two pennies, and so far Paul Tully and Neil are absent unless Neil joins us. And but I would Dan, could you just briefly bring us up to date on the before we get started with the minutes and the public comments, just the high school roof project, and then you can depart unless you want to stay for the other discussions.
Oh, sure, no problem. Be happy to. Yesterday was the last rip, as they say, on the entire roof. That's the last section of roofing that had to be removed, the old and the new put down. So that's a good milestone. You know, we lost, I'm sure Tiger has seen this over the summer, a very rainy summer. We lost over 20 days with the rain. So what we have left then is all the detail work, stripping the seams and flashings and metal work and things like that. But the significant portion of that project has been completed with the last roof. And so that's the update for that. Went a little bit longer than I thought we would, but as I say, with the weather not cooperating, that's where we are.
We didn't ask Mark Robbins to be with us today, but is the Sachs solar energized or?
No, Sachs isn't. It's awaiting a circuit breaker. It's one of these long lead item parts that we're waiting on, and finishing up the wiring in the electrical closet. So that's what we're waiting on, and that might be another 1 to 2 weeks anyway before we get the breaker. Okay,
and then the CHP will probably get a report on November where that stands. But I think that's the Board of Ed projects that are sort of pending, isn't it? So you're welcome to stay, Dan, if you want to. Otherwise, it's going to focus on town projects and the police project. So the minutes from the last meeting on, this says August, but the minutes say September. It's our September meeting, right? September 13th. The agenda says August 13th. The minutes are actually September 13th.
September 13th.
Correct.
Any comments?
Apologies.
Any comments or corrections on the minutes?
Well, I just got them. I did have a couple of comments. I think where it says, and I haven't had a chance to read through them the whole way. I did see that, I think it says Penny Young made a comment. I believe that was Penny Ration. I'm trying to think about I don't have it on my phone, and I couldn't dial in off my iPad. So if you could find that where it says Penny Young commented on something, it was Penny Ration.
In which item, Penny? Do you remember?
I'm trying to get. I have to dial back in on my iPad. I think it was like the third item down.
Okay, we'll look. No problem.
It should be right there. And also the ZREC discussion should be with the high school projects. The ZRECs don't relate to the CHP. The second item was CHP, and then the first thing under it was ZRECs at the high school. I think the ZRECs at the high school and getting it are appropriate. You know, I think that's what happened, but it should be in the with reference to the high school project in the section above.
That's fine.
And I mean, if you wait to the end of the meeting, if you wait later, I can read down to the rest of the minutes. I just didn't have a chance to do that yet.
Okay, we'll do that. Welcome. So
I'm going to try and come in. I'm going to go out and try and come in on the town Zoom, so if I actually have the ability to do that.
Okay.
Okay.
So we'll do a motion on the minutes before the end of the meeting. Comments from the public. This is a virtual meeting for the convenience of the members. So we will take comments only by email. And I guess we're taking comments to which email box? I guess my email box is as good as any, kevin.moynihan@canact.gov. And we will read any comments received in the course of the meeting or before the end of the meeting.
I haven't got a chance to look at the meetings yet, so, or the minutes yet, so I'm sorry. I'm trying to pull them up.
You can always wait.
Yeah, I won't be able to vote. I just haven't reviewed them.
Okay. That brings us to the first item on our agenda for discussion. I thought we should have a discussion about the police department project, and I will initial comments. So 2 weeks ago, we started the process with a all boards meeting of reviewing the results of architect work. First of all, I thought I'd review for everyone the architects. Brian Humes with Jakunski Humes has worked with the town before on our police department building as well as the ambulance building. So he knows that building. That's why we selected him. He's also done needs assessments for the town previously. So the need to do an updated needs assessment, which was part of the police department building committee project, and to evaluate whether we can and should renovate the current building was a logical project for Brian to do. And when he said that was going to take 3 months to do, the other architect, which is Castle Blues, was the logical firm to do a different study on locations if we were to build a new building somewhere. So Brian Humes is a smaller shop. He does a lot of small police departments around the New England area in Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Hampshire. Brian actually worked for Chuck Booth for the first 10 or 15 years of his career. And Brian is a very capable architect, as we've seen. The benefit of having done this is we've gotten a view of both of the architecture firms. So Brian's analysis of the building has shown that it is doable to renovate. Renovate as new, which is an education term in Connecticut, taking an old school building and basically gutting it and repurposing it for the future, as we did with our high school, which turned out, as Penny Ration knows, to have pluses and minuses. As well as we all know, I guess, having been a taxpayer here for 40 years. So the building committee will meet Thursday and finalize their work on the renovate as new plan, because the environmental report was not available for September, and that's now in, and it's appropriate that the building committee further vet the renovate as new option and be prepared to present to the town funding bodies, now probably looking at mid-November. The Castle Blues firms is a much larger firm. I think they have 60 employees. And they do small town as well as city police departments around the Northeast. They have internal capabilities for site selection. What is Eric called? A landscape person or what? Tiger? Joe?
He's a landscape architect.
Landscape architect. So since we were on a 3-month or more track on the renovate plan for the current building, we gave Castle Booze 3 months to evaluate what turned out to be 13 potential town-owned sites. We always were mindful of the possibility that there was private property in town that could be used for a police department if we were willing to spend probably in New Canaan $3 to $5 million or more for a 2.5 acre parcel. We've never been able to identify that private property parcel that would work. But we still are open to the possibility if someone comes in and says, I'll sell you my property for in a great location for a price that makes sense. But of the 13, I think, Stuart, we had 54 town-owned properties, most of which have a purpose in life, such as parks or town halls or firehouses, and are not amenable to adding a police department building. Of the so we winnowed it down to 13. And we had an initial meeting back in April, with all the relevant town employees who work on buildings and land use and zoning and engineering, and their mission was to advise Castle Booze and answer questions on the site evaluation. We never met as a committee. We never discussed as a committee. It wasn't a committee. And Castle Booze really did their work, just like Brian Humes did his work. Of the 13 locations, some were sort of throwaways, such as the Vine Cottage Red Cross location. Although it was a throwaway, I think the site is probably as large or larger than the plot that the Wilton is looking at building their new police department on in Wilton. And when you look at these options, sometimes you have to look at the possibility of doing something different. For example, we've been looking at always putting all the parking on the site, but in the case of the Red Cross and Vine Cottage, since the shift change, which is civilian officers coming in and parking their private vehicles for the day, that requires, I don't know, Stuart, maybe
70,
20?
yeah, 20 just for the shift change. Then there's all the other vehicles. Total space, I think, around 78 or something.
Right. So the shift change vehicles could actually be located on an adjacent site. And I think sometimes we forget that we the considerations as to how you can utilize your assets in the most effective way. But anyway, of the 13, I think the Red Cross Vine Cottage was the biggest throwaway. Another one was East School, which has property on Silver Mine Road.
Yeah, 106. Yeah.
It would have potentially worked, but each of these various 13 locations had considerations of access to utilities and the difficulty of building a particular site, and also whether you had a build parking or build a parking structure. So Jakunski Humes did a rather cursory review of the 13 sites at the first meeting. And I think, so one thing that came out of that meeting was the town council would like to see 3 or 4 of the other locations further presented. And we can go through those. But so we've decided to, some of them are already analyzed in some detail. Some require a little bit more work for costing. And I would anticipate we can bring back those 3 or 4 by the end of October, no, probably the first week in November. Some of them are very similar to the Saks location, which was described as the optimal location in terms of cost. Some would be considerably more because you either have to purchase land or you have to build a parking structure. But the ones that will be presented further are the South Avenue location between the high school and Saks, the Locust Avenue parking lot, the Lumberyard parking lot, the Leaf Pile, which probably be very similar economics to the Saks location. Am I missing one, Joe and Tiger? Is that it?
That was the 4 it was left with.
Okay, so that's the current plan to have a probably mid-November, given the election and given the transition of the that's the problem right now, that we're in the transition of the town council. And we have players that will not be seated until mid-November.
Kevin, I'm sorry, you went out for a second. Can you just briefly say the 4 locations they're gonna look at? One was the leaf pile. What were the other 3?
Locust Avenue parking lot,
Okay,
Lumberyard parking lot,
okay,
and South Avenue between the high
South
school and Saks. We had a rather interesting discussion with John Engel and Steve Carl the other day in selecting those as to whether or not, and I talked about this to the superintendent last week, whether we ought to be building this road as another access out of the high school to South Avenue anyway, regardless of whether we did a police station there. The opportunity to improve the traffic flow around the high school and the buses getting out of the property more than one way could be a significant traffic.
Right,
So-
but that could be a project regardless of whether.
That's what I just said.
Place something new, right?
It's probably a good idea regardless.
Yeah,
As we discovered, Tiger Trail significantly helped the traffic situation at the high school. So that again, so maybe we're, what I anticipated was going to be a by end of November decision is probably an end of December decision. We've had one meeting. We'll probably have 4, 5, 6 more meetings before we make a decision on this process.
Kevin, the meetings you're talking about, like the joint town council board of finance meetings, are you talking about your internal meetings when you say additional discussion?
There's no more internal meetings, Amy. There's just, I think it makes sense to have a couple more joint meetings and then the Board of Finance begin to focus on economics independently. But just to get all the facts on the table as to what the options are.
Okay, and just reviewing, so the leaf pile, that would mean we'd have to relocate the leaf pile, right? So we'd have to find some other spot for that if we use that space. Is that correct?
No, because there's plenty of land there that probably 2/3 of the leaf pile could continue to operate there, and the building would be on the forefront of the property.
Okay, and
Amy, I don't want to get into the details right now. This is a summary of the process in terms of getting people up to date. So I'm not sure there's much more to be said about the process, but again, it's largely dependent on the work coming back from Castle Booze by early November, and then scheduling all boards meetings in November after, I guess, the new boards are seated.
Kevin, it's Penny. I think it's important to have outlined this and to underscore, that there's going to be continued study on this. And hopefully that assures the community that when we make decisions like this, we really do look at all kinds of options. And it's not just a singular focus. There are implications or ramifications of all the sites, and we look at those things and come up with what's an appropriate decision for all of the various needs that we have in town. So hopefully this will be reassuring to the community that we're not focused on one location, that it's an ongoing study.
Thank you, Penny. Actually, there's 2 other aspects of this that I should update people on. We started the process assuming we would include a pistol range in the project, although, as was indicated, half of all police departments don't have a pistol range at the facility. I think Brian Hume said that. About a year ago, we started discussions with another town about sharing a police pistol range. We've had a meeting last week with that town, and we are having another meeting next week with that town. And we will more than likely put forth a proposal to share a pistol range with another town or 2 other towns. That will impact the analysis as to what would go into a building or even the current location as far as adding a pistol range to South Avenue. As I said, we started those discussions a year ago. The other town is in the process of both of the towns are actually in the process of building new police departments. And that would be bring the cost of a pistol range for us down from about $2.5 million down to about $1 million or less to participate with another town if we did it on a capital investment basis. So that discussion will probably crystallize in November. Chief Karlikowski and I and others are meeting with the other towns next week. And then the other consideration is we've been having discussions with the developers of senior housing. We have another meeting on Thursday. And the opportunity to, if the decision is made to build new, to convert the existing building to senior housing. And I would emphasize moderate income senior housing. When I first started in town government 10 years ago, I served on the Senior Housing Policy Development Committee, and that committee recommended the town needs, I forget how many, 200 units of senior housing. 10 years later, we have still none. And I personally still think we need senior housing in town, and especially moderate income senior housing. And as the schoolhouse apartments was done 25 years ago, schoolhouse used to be home of our Board of Education. The opportunity to create senior housing at the current police department location. One thing we learned with Brian Humes' study and the environmental study and the study of the brick is that building can be renovated for another purpose. And senior housing is something that would be another purpose. And the delta between a new building and renovating the current building could more than be made up from the developer purchasing that building. That discussion will, and this is a developer that's done a lot of senior housing, a lot of affordable housing. He actually did the schoolhouse apartments renovation 30 years ago for us, and also did the South Avenue Cottage. And by the way, the discussions include the Housing Authority. Excuse me. The Housing Authority, whose mission statutorily is not only to create affordable housing, but also to create senior housing. And the Housing Authority is willing to sponsor a project with a developer who could look at that option. So I think I'd mentioned.
Hey, Kevin, if that was a potential use, would I be fair to say that would not produce tax revenues because it would be a nonprofit? Would they be, your assumption is it would be a tax exempt?
All senior housing other than affordable housing that's exempt. For example, Canaan Parish is a taxable property. Canaan Parish is a Section 8 housing project, not a legally affordable housing project. So the senior housing, especially the ONUC project on ONUC, was going to be taxable.
Okay.
So it would be taxable.
Okay, thank you.
Stuart?
Yes.
You want to make any comments, or we can discuss this a little bit further. I mean, anybody have any questions about what I've said, or?
Well, I obviously I've been a part of the process for quite some time now, and it's a very involved process. It's not one variable or two variables, but probably a set of 12 variables that you look at as you evaluate each property, and then you have to weigh. And let me just give a very, very simple hypothetical. If you build a brand new building at the current location, it might be, say, 28 million. You renovate as new, it could be 18 million. Where's the appetite with regards to costs? And you go on down through, the virtue of one site versus another site versus a third site, and it gets to be a fairly complex matrix. So I'm glad we're taking the time that we need to go through the whole process and come to the best conclusion for everybody. That's it. Did I cut out?
No, thank you, Stuart. If we have no further questions, we will move to a update of capital projects from Tiger. And I would note that we haven't done anything yet with respect to the budget for next year. So I would plan on having capital project forecast for the budget at the November meeting. Although, when's the November meeting? Right. I suppose we have all incumbents here for the November meeting. Yeah.
November 8th is the next SACB meeting.
Okay.
Right? Did you say?
November 8th at 8:30.
Correct.
Okay, but I would plan on having, as we go into our budget analysis internally, what the capital projects would be coming forward for 2022. Both those that are currently funded and those that are will be asked for funding. Tiger, do you want to give an update on capital projects?
Sure. I'll do I guess I'll do the outside contractors or the infrastructure projects first. Mainly Aquarian and Eversource Gas. Aquarian at present is working in 3 locations in town now. They're working on Elm Street, Main Street, and this morning they started installations of water mains on Mortimer and Lockwood. The unfortunate thing is that we had asked Aquarian back 17, 18, 19, and 20 whether or not they wanted to do some water main work on Mortimer and Lockwood, and they had faulty information from the old New Canaan Water. They thought they had a 6 or 8 inch main there. They actually had a 2-inch main. It was a break over the summer, and they quickly made plans to rectify that and put new mains in prior to us repaving. So that's going to take about 4 weeks to finish, 4 to 6 weeks, and we'll determine at that time whether or not we want to go forward and repave at the end of the year or wait till the spring and repave at the beginning of next season. The sidewalks are complete. We have a little bit of drainage work left to do on Mortimer and Lockwood. So all of the town work is pretty much complete, and we're just waiting for them. On Elm Street, they're complete with all of their work. And again, they have some information or lack of information, I guess you would call it. And so they feel that they have a couple of services that are still on the old main. So they're going to have to shut the water down and find out who gives them a phone call. It says we don't have water. They're not. So at that point in time, then they'll go back in and change it back over again. That work has all been at night. Majority of it's been at night, and it'll continue to be at night. And tonight they're going to start back on Main Street, working between East Avenue and Cherry Street on main installation. Then they'll come back and start working, tying some of the existing services over to the temporary line. And then they're hoping to complete their work by December 1st. They have a phone call into the DOT as to whether or not they want to repave. At that point in time, it'll be outside the DOT's paving time frame. And I think it would be best for us to wait till the spring, but that'll be a discussion between us and the Connecticut DOT at that time. But they'll be working nights, Sunday through Thursday nights, at least until December. Eversource Gas, on the other hand, has one more night of work to do. They're hoping to start at 8 o'clock tonight and do what's basically a procedure, which is a gas up and a tie-in for the facility on 42 Forest Street. They weren't able to complete it last Thursday, so they're coming in tonight to do it. And at that point in time, they think that they'll be done on the street, so we'll only have one utility working at night there. And then at that time, they'll shift gears and start to work on the parking lot behind us, coming off of Park Street to then feed the town hall and the town hall annex, and hopefully some of the facilities on Elm Street, some of the establishments on Elm Street. We have a meeting with Eversource later this week for a walkthrough on their plans for that area. Then on the town side, work on the I'm sorry, Kevin.
Not only that area, but also Upper Elm, Upper Pine, Grove Street, which we've been desperately waiting for them to have a plan. And they do plan to do those, but I think before the snow flies.
Correct. And then we did, we're looking to see if we can't do some expansion in other residential areas, specifically behind the Y. So we're garnering support for that, whether or not residents there would want to see a gas expansion there and would want to hook up to services. So we're working with Eversource on trying to gain some information there. On the town side, work on the carriage barn is still underway, going quite well. We're hoping to start tying, closing up the walls and finishing up the work there. Work on the playhouse roof is underway. You can see the scaffolding all around the building. So that's being done. The Gorge Pavilion roof is almost complete. We have just a little bit of drainage work, some catch basins to put in there to finish that work. The work at Waveney House is nearing completion. We're just waiting for materials that were ordered. We have a 26-week lead time on the doors and the hardware, and we're looking to put in an additional railing installation on the back loge. But if you have an opportunity to go there and take a look, it looks fantastic, the work that's been done so far. And then I did mention Mortimer, Brinkerhoff, and Lockwood. We'll look to see whether or not we're going to repave at the end of the season or beginning of next. Work at Bristow Park, phase 2 is underway. Phase 1B is underway. That's boardwalk work. That's all complete. And then we're looking to do some trail work to tie that in. So if you have an opportunity to go down to Bristol, you can see the new and improved boardwalk in that area. And then we are working on final plan for the ice rink, and we need to bring that to planning and zoning for a special permit. That'll be during their November meeting. And then we'll be looking to repave parking lot there at Waveney in anticipation of the ice rink going there, and then bringing in some additional services as far as transformer has to be upgraded, things of that nature for that work. And the only other thing of note was that we were able to hire a part-time gardener for Waveney House and Lapham Community Center, and hopefully some other facilities to try to work in concert with the Garden Club and the Conservancy and other groups that are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on plantings. So we're hoping that this gardener will actually be able to help us maintain those plantings in place and help beautify the area for future use of Waveney. I don't know if there's any questions or.
Which parking lot is the ice rink going to go in?
The big lot in the middle, right behind the softball field, between the softball field and the soccer fields, and the workout area. In that area, it's right now it's all milled. It's pavement millings, but it's basically due to the sun and due to compaction from the cars over time. It's basically looks like a paved lot. We'll resurface that lot and get it ready for the ice rink itself. We had plans to do that lot anyway to pave it. And this just fits in nicely with the overall plan.
Just
Great.
in terms of this ice rink, it's still tentative, right? In terms of, that how it's going to be paid for, where the capital is, where the operating is, what support needs. I mean, this is all just conceptual at this point, correct? I mean, in terms of going forward with that, I'm not aware that this is like a done deal in the capital plan and going forward, because I haven't seen any numbers reflecting.
Amy, it's not a capital plan for the town, other than doing a parking lot that really desperately needs redoing anyway. It would be
the power source and stuff like that, right?
No, it's not. That's the power source is not our cost.
Right, that's being funded elsewhere.
So this is okay.
I mean, the only other thing
covers the cost.
The only other thing we're doing is winterizing the bathrooms, which is not a bad thing anyway.
That's a good thing to do. Yeah, I agree.
Right. Yeah, we had looked to do that anyways. So a couple of things were just I would call it synergistic, but they were, in essence, where they're going were in essence areas that we were already working to improve.
Right. So this
parking lot is currently an impervious parking lot, or not?
It's impervious. It's millings that have been basically compacted in place, so it's an impervious lot.
So this has been approved by Park and Rec and everything, like, this is all Yeah, I thought it was a conceptual project at this point, not a done deal.
It should be operational by December if all goes well. Planning and zoning has to approve the what aspect of it, Tiger?
It's a special permit for use and for this, it's not a permanent installation, but it's greater than a temporary installation. So it has to go for a special permit in the Waveney zone. If it
Okay,
fits
and
the
also,
criteria.
all self-supporting. In this one, no town contribution.
Except for the possibility of ARPA funds. It's,
Right.
you know, we've suggested there be a contribution toward their developmental costs with some of the ARPA funds. But
Yeah.
the
Right.
otherwise, this is similar to Westport, where the police union or whatever it's called over there
Yeah.
runs the skating as a separate independent operation on town property. So we're just hosting the facility with an improved flat piece of property and also winterized bathrooms.
All right, so for those of us not in the loop on this one, where do we get a better understanding of how it's going to operate, how it's going to cover its costs? I mean, look, it's obviously it's always a positive thing to have another.
Well, Jake Granito heads a committee of the Parks and Rec Commission, which is coordinating with Parks and Rec, because Parks and Rec is facilitating it in a park. And so Jake is one source, Tiger is probably the other sources, as well as Joe Zagrensky, who are simply coordinating the.
It was approved at a Park and Rec meeting earlier this year, this location itself. They had looked at several locations, Jake's subcommittee, and then approved that by the greater, by the commission itself.
Tiger,
Back in the summer.
what's the cost of winterizing the bathrooms, and what's the cost of ongoing maintenance and heating?
Joe, you want to answer that?
So the existing infrastructure is really there. So it's only the matter of adding additional cabinet unit heaters, electric ones. So it's probably like a $15,000 effort.
And then the ongoing
That doesn't
cost-
get it that doesn't get it fully winterized building. So the building was designed in a way where it can be converted to be sealed off and insulated fairly easily.
And then the ongoing cost is just the cost of electricity for a couple of space heaters, so to speak.
That's the only town commitment.
Mhm.
There would be heaters, and they're planning on having a tent there. There would be heaters that would be propane heaters for the tent that would come from the tent company, and those would be borne by the what is it, the not-for-profit that's doing it.
See rink.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
I just have to drop off at 9:15. So I had 2 points. One is just on the rink, would the town insurance cover the operations of it? And the second one I wanted to say before I left is, if you all want, the Board of Ed can do a presentation on the work it did this past summer, and with a quick little look ahead at our next infrastructure meeting, if that's something you all would like. Just, you don't have to decide now. You could get back to me or to Joanne Keating on that later.
Thank you, Penny. Before you leave, could we just do a motion on the minutes so people are prepared?
I hadn't had a chance. It was section 5 was where my comments were.
Oh,
I haven't had the opportunity to read through them all.
Let's defer the minutes until November meeting then.
Yeah, sorry about that. Thank you.
Okay, I actually have a question on natural gas. Tiger, we
So
running?
I'll see you all
in-
later. I apologize. I just had an appointment I couldn't change. Bye.
Thank you.
Are we running into discussions with neighbors who are being given the option of connecting into natural gas? Natural gas prices have increased 119% over last year with the pipelines being shut down. Are we anticipating dramatic increase in additional increases, and which is going to really discourage people from connecting in? and also our own budgeting and, you know, being dependent more on natural gas.
Well, we,
I mean,
Oil has also increased, Penny, so I'm not sure the concern is entirely there. I mean, you're still, the long-term history of natural gas is a better deal.
you know, I just didn't know whether or not the potential connecting neighbors are, you know, really getting concerned about whether or not this is economically, you know, a good deal for them, and therefore they won't be connecting in.
I haven't heard that yet. The connections are still, the call before he digs, as far as the connections on the existing pipe lines that have already been in are still rolling in. So there's still people,
Good.
you know, even from the 2018 initiative, people are still looking to convert. So
Good.
I haven't heard that yet. We're still gathering our data as far as, you know, our lifetime usage so far to see exactly how we will be budgeting going forward. You know, we have our oil costs for you know, the next year figured out, or what it would be to buy. We're working and trying to coordinate the two between what we've converted already versus what we're planning on converting. If that answered your question.
Yep. Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so that brings us to new business, capital planning. As I mentioned before, we'll talk about in November, not now, because we're not prepared.
Okay.
And anything else on the new business front?
Kevin, I'm not sure this new business, it's probably old business. Can you just update where we stand on Vine Cottage? What's going on with that? I think if I recall correctly, they were going to put out new RFPs or something. I'm just not sure where it stands.
Yeah, that's in the minutes, Amy. You asked that last month, and the building is on the market, and I don't know when the deadline is in terms of responding to the
It
RFP.
went out on September 7th. Was the RFP date. I believe it's in December. When we're looking for everything to come back at present.
Yeah, we've had some interest by a few different parties. So.
Okay, and the RFP is up to look at if we want to take a look.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, it is.
Sorry.
So no further
It's
business.
due back December 2nd. I'm sorry. 12/2.
Without anything.
Any other update on the theater at this point?
Well, we have ongoing discussions with an operator, which we need to pretty soon finalize into a letter of intent. And that will be the basis to bring forward a request to fund the ADA and other improvements. You know, we're not, given the fact that people are not flocking to the movies and we're still in a COVID environment, we're not terribly unhappy that it's taking longer than we would have anticipated. But now that the roof will be on, if we can explain the capital improvements that have to be done, even if we hadn't, if the prior operator was still operating. Having closed the building down, we really now have a burden of not reopening it until some basic things are done.
Hey, Kevin, has the TDAC group looked at that property with an eye to, is there an alternate highest and best alternative way to put it to work? And I know part of the interest in this is as a downtown revitalization and support. So I just wonder, have they been thinking about this building, highest best use, anything else? I mean, I know people have to get creative on this.
Tucker, TDAC would indicate that generally people think that we want an operating movie theater in town. And if, you know, Todd has suggested we do some surveying around that with the public, which we could do, but I really envision that will be part of the discussion with the Board of Finance and the Town Council as to whether they want to invest in the improvements that are needed to reopen it as a movie theater, or, you know, if not, then we have to look at alternatives. But right now, the operating assumption is people want a movie theater. And
No, I think the discussion we have with Board of Finance is that you know, to go forward with this, we feel that we would need kind of a greater analysis in terms of, you know, supporting, putting the money into it for movie theater, how it might be used, what revenue might be generated, what might cost it might incur. And it's not that people have a problem with, perhaps it's not a revenue generator, as long as we just need to know. We don't want, just because a movie operator says, hey, we can do this, we feel we need an analysis in terms of, especially given, you know, movie theaters and, you know, everyone's alternatives and what they can watch at home and stream. Just, I mean, our concern is that there's a reason that the movie theaters are closed in every other town around us. And, you know, if we're going to invest in this, I think we have to understand, you know, the potential there, or, you know, perhaps it's something that's subsidized, but if we want to subsidize, we have to go into it with full understanding of the financials of it. So that's where, from the Board of Finance, I think we've all kind of said, does it make sense? It's easy for people to say they want a movie theater. And I've talked to a lot of people, yeah, we like it. And then you ask, how many times would you go? 3 times a year, whatever. So, you know, we need to kind of dig down on highest and best use of it, I think. And I'm not saying I'm against it. I just think it's such a changing industry and changing consumer demand and consumer patterns of behavior, you know, to just go back and say, you know, first run movie theater. I mean, we didn't have a heck of a lot of people using it pre-COVID, you know, as things were changing. So that's, I mean, people often say they like stuff in town, but they don't necessarily support it. So we just have to be really, I think we need to be very judicious in going forward with moving forward on this. We just need to know what we're getting into.
Understood. Anything else? If not, I'll move we adjourn at 9:21. And we'll see you next month for November 8th.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thank you.